They no longer called it the Union of States. Remember last night's lesson we spoke about the Union of Free, Sovereign, Independent States who had joined with their voluntary consent. Now it's just the Union. Save King Union. And that's the phrase they use in the old books. King Union must be saved. Now we're going to go to the Republic of Republics, and he offers this thought-provoking thing. He says, consider this. If you have a string of pearls, what's most important? The string or the pearls? If you have a bag of gold, what's most important? The bag or the gold? That's not too hard. Oh, he says, the Union of Free, Sovereign, Independent States. What's most important? The Union or the Free, Sovereign, Independent States? That's not hard. For me, it's not hard. They were free, sovereign, independent states when they created the Constitution, and now there's a group of individuals who want to say we must worship King Union. If you leave the Union, it will destroy the Constitution. That's what they said. Well, it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense to claim the Constitution will be destroyed because a state or one or more want to leave the Union. You beautiful people that came up to visit with me and share your thoughts here at the break a moment ago, I'm excited to see your minds are working. That's good. Continue to let that work in your heart and search and study and look for the truth. Satan goes about deceiving nations. Now that's scripture in my church. He goes about deceiving nations. And how does he do that? By deceiving individuals, preferably teachers and leaders, so that the nation can follow the wrong path. Enter Nathan Dane, Joseph Story, and Daniel Webster. We're back now in the 1830s. These characters, probably all good men. See, people come up to me like at the break here, well, he was a good man. Yeah, they may have been good men. Are you a good man? I hope you are. Your wife probably thinks you are. Does it qualify me just because I'm good? Do I make all wise decisions? Are all of my decisions sound and intelligent? No. My dad is a good man. He's dead now, but he was a good man. Maybe he's still, I don't know how that works out, the past tense, present tense. Anyway, my dad is a good man, and he made some bad choices. And I'm going to show you a bad choice next week. Ooh, maybe it's in this lesson. Oh dear, I don't remember. If it's in this lesson, you'll go home with happy feelings that it didn't happen to you. Nathan Dane, who was he? Well, he was a prominent lawyer. He drafted the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. He published a law book in 1823. It was not the first law book. I've got to correct this slide. He founded the Massachusetts School. Now, the Massachusetts School was a think tank. You've heard of think tanks. Back in Washington, D.C., the intelligent people get together and they think in a tank, figuratively speaking. And they come up with these ingenious ideas and they publish them. Okay, that's a think tank. Maybe good, maybe bad, maybe somewhere in between. Joseph Story, he was the most learned scholar ever to sit on the Supreme Court. Now that's what they taught in some of the, past textbooks. He was the Dane Professor of Law at Harvard. Now the picture we had earlier was Nathan Dane. Nathan Dane contributed money to the Harvard Law School, and they set up a Harvard Law School chair funded by Nathan Dane. And Joseph Story was the professor of that chair. He construed the Constitution in favor of expanding federal power. He engaged in behind-the-scenes political activity, which included the Massachusetts School. These are some of the features of that man. And there was Daniel Webster, the great God Webster. This is what they say he was. He was so well respected and loved by many people, they claimed he was the great God. They didn't think he was really God, but, he was a special person. He was one of the greatest lawyers in American history. Note that's in quotes. This is what's believed about his life. He was a United States Senator, and he was the Secretary of State. He also was a co-founder of the Massachusetts School, the think tank. Do not confuse Noah Webster with Daniel Webster. They were cousins. They had each a different role they played. Daniel Webster was, I think, 17 years older. Do your arithmetic there. He was it's the other way around. Noah Webster was older by roughly 17 years than Daniel Webster. In the book, The Republic of Republics, chapter 12, it's called Verbal Jugglery. They give us definitions. And Bernard Janin Sage is showing us how words changed. And they were changed, apparently, he points out, to juggle. He calls it jugglery, to help persuade and direct people to a consolidated government. Noah Webster's dictionary of 1844 reads, "The Assembly of Senators and Representatives of the several states of North America, according to the present constitution or political compact by which they are united in a federal republic." This is the definition for Congress. In 20 years later, it reads, "The Assembly of Senators and Representatives of the people of a nation, especially a republic, for the purpose of enacting laws and considering matters of national interest and constituting the chief legislative body of a nation." Now, what you're doing here is comparing what happened during that short period of 20 years. We have, in the left-hand example, Congress represents a federal republic, and it's coming from representatives of the several sovereign states. On the right-hand definition, we find we're now a national government. No mention is made of the states, and they're promoting the national interest, the body of the nation. Something dreadful happened between those 2 years when those books were published. The states federalized. They did not nationalize. Now that's the truth. That's what happened in the beginning. The Massachusetts School were expounders and perverters. They were the prominent men of the day whose false educational ideas were widely embraced and promoted. They started out as a very small group, and they expanded and expanded until finally the popular movement of the country was accepting their false educational ideas. They were consolidationist. What the Massachusetts School desired was an all-powerful central government over one nation, indivisible. Socialist activist Francis Bellamy would later incorporate this language into the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I gave his name wrong earlier. It's Francis, not Jeremy. Jeremy, I think, was his brother. Massachusetts School believed a federacy was changed to a nation, provinces called states. The central government is the supreme law of the land. The central government is the final judge of its own authority. That's where we are today, by the way. And they were going to use coercion if necessary to maintain this position. They were willing to kill you if you didn't want to accept. What's a faction? A group of people in an organization who have common interest, usually in opposition to the principles or aims of the main body or leadership. Partisan conflict within country. The Massachusetts School was first a faction, then an enterprising minority, finally a victorious party engaged in overthrowing constitutional liberty. Or we could call them a gigantic faction. Abel Parker Upshur, The True Nature and Character of Our Federal Government, published in 1863. A critical review of Joseph Story's commentaries on the Constitution. He didn't agree with the great Joseph Story's think tank version of American government. Abel Parker Upshur was an ably qualified lawyer. He became the Secretary of State after Daniel Webster. So we have two very competent men disagreeing with each other. Has that ever happened before? Yeah. Okay. I like Abel Parker Upshur's work. He does a good job, and so if I don't have it here today, I'll try to bring it next week. Abel Parker Upshur, published in 1863. But what did he say? He said, with a sincere desire after truth, several of the authors of this time period have written in their preface or introduction to the book, I want my children to know what really happened. I have a sincere desire to share that, and then they launch into the book. One of them says, I don't expect this book will ever become popular, but this is what happened. And they explain it from their perspective. It's where they're just as capable and worthy of listening to as anyone else. There are degrees in college, if degrees have any meaning, which they don't to me. Someone called me Dr. Pratt one day, and we got that straightened out really fast. Oh, she said, well, what should I call you? I said, how about Blacksmith Pratt? I'm not even a very good blacksmith. I'm a student. I read, and you can too. Many of you do. A voluntary compact. We're back to the hand. Oh dear, it's coming. I can see it coming. A voluntary compact between free, independent, and sovereign states. Let's get through this quickly. You've seen this before. R, and the next one. Here it is. This is my dad. You met him, didn't you, David? Yes. He was 95 at the time we took this picture, and we had a gathering of 95 of his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It was a grand event. And I asked him for permission to show the illustration I'm about to use. You can see that he is alive and well in this picture, and a year before that, he made a bad choice. My father is a good man. Good men can make bad choices. My father was a contractor for his whole life. And I learned how to run the tools, and I was a workman also, a craftsman we call it. He wore 4 table saws out. And then one day at age 94, he was making Christmas presents for the grandchildren, and he made a bad choice. Does it make any difference how good he is, or whether he said his prayers or reads the Bible? Does that make any difference? No, because he still suffered the consequences. Choices have consequences. My father's helping hand. Now, if you don't like the sight of blood, close your eyes. The surgeon that did the surgery took the picture. My father made a bad choice, and when I told my little grandson about it the next day, my little grandson says, he's only 6 years old then, he says, why didn't Grandpa use push sticks? Push sticks are what you use on a table saw when you push the board through that's too small to handle with your bare fingers. Why didn't Grandpa use push sticks? This is the hand after it was cleaned up, and the surgeon is now ready to start reconstruction. The finger is sawed in half, the thumb is completely severed. The thumb is completely severed from the hand. This hand is insignificant, and it's nothing compared to what I'm going to liken it to. The wreckage of the Civil War. Let that hand represent the wreckage of the Civil War. The hand is insignificant. Think about the bodies that were blown up, maimed, mangled, and murdered as they were charged and burned and all the other destruction. Now, we won't look at that again. Thank goodness. The side that won the war wrote the history, and they made it look like this. This looks really nice, doesn't it? Yeah, there's no problems there. They freed the slaves. They saved the Union. And after the war was over, even though they violated it during the war, after the war was over, they restored the Constitution. This is the popular story told by the official literature. Is that really what happened? This is the front cover of a history book. It's titled, The Lies My Teacher Told Me, written by a history professor at the college level. He writes a book report on 12 high school history books. And the 12 history books, he gives them each a weight like 5.3 pounds and 1,088 pages. There was no shortage of space to tell the story. And yet he says, as the students come into his classes from all over the country, they don't have a grasp of American history. Whitewash is one of the problems. They whitewash history. Yes, whitewash. Look at the bare naked truth. 6 weeks later. This isn't nearly as bad. Yeah, my dad is sitting in a big chair. He almost died from this incident because of bleeding to death. He's now recovering. His hand is on the arm of the chair, and I had no idea why I wanted to take a picture. I just thought, I ought to take a picture because, family history. And so I said, Dad, could I take a picture of your hand? Oh, yeah, that's okay. And then I made a mistake. I said, Dad, tell me about your accident. This was no accident. I made a bad choice, and I suffered the consequences. Let that help you to grasp the significance of presidents and other civic leaders who make bad choices, and we suffer the consequences. Let this picture represent Reconstruction after the war. Now, that other ghastly picture was the wreckage of the war. This is the Reconstruction. His thumb was completely sawed off. Oh, well, they reconstructed it. They put 2 steel pins down through the bone and held the thumb in place for a few months until the bone fused together. His thumb's a half an inch shorter and there's no joint in it. It doesn't work anymore. But it looks good. Well, so much for his pointer finger. The sovereign independent states are gone. And there's nothing we're going to do about it. Truism. A state is not sovereign when it can no longer freely choose the form of government by which it will be ruled. Article 1, Section 3 of the Utah State Constitution. The state of Utah is an inseparable part of the federal union. That's what it says in your Constitution. That means that was before you were born. Before any of us were born. Somebody decided we were indivisible from the federal union. Can they decide that for you? This is thought-provoking, isn't it? There's the hand as it was before he passed away. And let's let that hand represent the new nation. We transformed, I have tried to instruct you, from a republic to a nation. This hand represents the new nation spoken of in the Gettysburg Address. The thumb represents the Constitution that we claim was restored. It just doesn't work. The pointer finger's gone. The free, sovereign, independent states are no more. They're now administrative agencies of a powerful central government. Oh, we still have a legislature, we still have an executive and a judicial. But the judicial and the executive have usurped powers that were never granted, as has the legislature. When the North invaded the South in 1861, the United States was changed from a republic of republics to a domestic empire. An empire is a group of states or territories under one absolute sovereign power or authority. The Federal Phoenix. This is an illustration from a book printed in England in 1864. Had they printed in the United States, the book or the newspaper would have been closed down. The Union Army, under the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, closed any agency that tried to say anything against the war. And they would, in fact, in some cases, destroy your press. Send in mobs and let them destroy all the type and all the printing equipment. Thousands upon thousands of people were put in prison with no charges, just held indefinitely with no way to get out. They called that suspending habeas corpus. The president has no authority to do that. This illustration was done in England to try and show what they felt the political anyway, you know the word, caricature. Down at the bottom, if you can see the firewood down here that's being destroyed to create this phoenix, you'll see free press, United States Constitution, commerce, states' rights, habeas corpus, credit. These are the things that are being burned, and from the burning smoke and flames comes up this mighty phoenix. A consolidated empire arises out of the destruction of the Confederated States. This was all done. This is English in 1864. It's English political art. And I put that on. This symbolizes the new nation. Oh, someone was looking for that at the break. This is your chance. Whoever you were, the name of the book is The Red Republicans, Marxism in the Civil War. It answers 2 questions. Why did Karl Marx and other socialists find Mr. Lincoln's war worthy of their support? And why did these radical socialists feel a kinship with Abraham Lincoln and share the desire for the destruction of the South? Walter Kennedy, Al Benson, 2007. This is a Republican leader. After the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, Thaddeus Stevens was one of the more powerful leaders. He was a member of the House of Representatives. He declared, "The Constitution is a worthless bit of old parchment." Another leader at that time, a Republican Senator, Wendell Phillips, declared, "Our philosophy, let there be no compromise until every breathing soul who holds to the old American principles of constitutionalism ceases to breathe." Pretty strong. Any of you Republicans? This is one of your forerunners. Now, here's another statement he made. "The Republican Party is in no sense a national party. It is a party of the North organized against the South." You know, I got an invitation to contribute to the National Senatorial Committee for the Republican Party to support the party nationally. And they said, "If you will just send in your money, we will be able to promote the great principles of our founding Republican fathers." These are the founding Republican fathers. Now, you see, the Republican Party evolved from Alexander Hamilton's Federalist Party, which begat the Whig Party, which begat the Republican Party. That's who won the election in 1861. Most people have no clue where their party comes from or what their founding principles were. The party won its platform. 3 things. Internal improvements. And they will raise the money for that by protecting tariffs. And we will have a national bank to handle all the money. Those 3 things are the platform of the 1861 candidate for president. He won the election with 40% of the vote. Republican Senate Leadership Survey. Boy, I forgot I put it in here. This is what they quoted right in their own document, February of 2010. "If I will just send the money, return the Republican Party to our founding principles." I just gave you the founding principles. Probably they're here again. Oh, then they say in that same letter, "Republicans must never stray from our core principles." I wonder what they think the core principles are. I know a lot of good Republicans. What do you think your core principles are? What's your heritage? Do not abandon the conservative core principles on which our party was built. This is all out of that letter I got in 2010. Founding principles, protective tariffs, internal improvements. Internal improvements we call today corporate welfare. You know, if a bank is too big to fail, or if an automobile industry is too big to fail, we're going to find ways to bail them out. This is corporate welfare. It's internal improvements. And a national bank, the party of the North organized against the South. Charles Dickens, he's a respected scholar. He's the one that has written some of the famous books like Christmas Carol and others. He was the closest student of what was going on. He does a good job of summarizing the cause of the war. Union means so many millions a year lost to the South. Secession means the loss of the same millions to the North. The love of money is the root of this as of many, many other evils. The quarrel between the North and South is, as it stands, solely a fiscal quarrel. It was all about money. Following the war on the South, there was a big question. Was the Constitution restored following Reconstruction? Philadelphia Convention of 1866. Now, when I read these short excerpts, I first read it in the Republic of Republics. I read a quotation, and I thought, can that be true? Has he taken it out of context? And so we get my research friends to go find the whole speech. And I read the entire thing to see if I can quote it in public and still be accurate. So what I'm about to show you is from the Philadelphia Convention of 1866. Here it is. In 2 most important particulars, the victory achieved by the national government has been final and decisive. First, it was established beyond all further controversy and by the highest of all human sanctions, the absolute supremacy of the national government, as defined, etc., and the permanent integrity and indissolubility of the federal union. That's what the party claimed in 1866. This was the party that won that election, by the way. President Lincoln was elected by a different party in the second election called the Union Party. Is that right? The Union Convention, the Union Party. I'm pretty sure I got it right. Horace Greeley was the editor of the New York Tribune in 1872. Now notice the years. We're well after the war is over, all the smoke is gone, the dust is settled. A mighty army, a navy absorbing nearly the whole mercantile marine, vast military stores, a martial law, a national debt, a heavy taxation, enormous dues, all things which it has long all things which it was long the object of all constitutional statesmen to prevent have now been established without resistance and have transformed the government. The New York Sun, let's review it again. The influence of Jefferson's democratic principles is rapidly waning, while the principles of Hamilton are rapidly increasing. Power has been gravitating toward the central government. Which word don't I like in there? Gravitating is too slow. It was yanked toward the central government. Correction, please. Oh, I don't remember what I've got in one slide series to the next. I got it right here. Power wasn't really gravitating toward the central government. It had been yanked from the states and usurped by the central government during the Lincoln administration. George Edmunds, her name is really Elizabeth Merriweather. She's quoting a Union officer named Don Piott in 1887. True story of the late war has not been told. It probably never will be told. It is not flattering to our people. Unpalatable truths seldom find their way into history. Lincoln, Grant, and the Union armies gave a victory to Hamiltonism when it subjugated the Confederates in the South. Under the new nation established during the subjugation of the South, the Constitution became a law on the states and not a compact between or among them. Instead of a constitution for the associated states, it became the Constitution of the United States, a singular proper noun. Massive programs began to launch big government, consolidated government. James Garfield, U.S. Department of Education, 1867. Nevertheless, centralization of power continued to go from bad to worse. 1887, Interstate Commerce Commission. And Uncle Sam got fatter and fatter, as this political caricature shows. Now we start the move toward world empire. This is the first big step right here. The Maine was a ship in the Havana Harbor. We'd sent a ship down there because we were concerned about certain things that were going on, and while the ship was there, it blew up and sank. And immediately, this is my lesson, this is the portion that teaches rise to world order, or world empire, I should say, world empire. Oh my goodness gracious here. I jumped ahead of myself. Let's go back. The Maine crisis happened. This is the rise to world empire. It is my impression that of all the wars we entered after the Revolutionary War, there was, oh yeah, that's it. That's my impression. Not a justifiable war. Oh, but Mr. Pratt, the War of 1812. That's the next one, I think. Wasn't that justifiable? You know, the more I study and read, the more I think we violated the principle of just war in every war we entered. See, there are principles of just war. Those principles have been worked out for centuries, and we didn't follow them in any other war. Oh, but we went into the 1812 war to protect the sailors that were being impounded from ships out on the ocean. That's a whole story that we won't tell now, but that was perhaps a justification for war, but nobody bothers to mention that within 3 weeks England stopped taking the sailors. Did we back off and say, we'll go home happy? No, we continued to battle for 2 more years after the cause of the war was gone. I don't find a single war that's justifiable under the cause of just war. Now, this is the newspaper illustration from the battle, or the sinking of the Maine. And they're showing this dramatic event on the headlines of the newspaper. The Maine explosion caused by bomb or torpedo. You ever walk by the newsstand and you see the newspaper and you just read the heading as you go by? That's about as far as I get into most newspapers. Oh, what does this tell you? Yes. So you're going to get the impression, if you read the headlines, that some devious characters have blown up our ship. Well, it doesn't bother. You don't bother to read the fine print. It says we really don't know if that's what happened. We just think it was that way because Spain is such a despicable country, they must have done it. And that's how we then launched war on Spain, because we thought they blew up our ship. Well, we knew they didn't blow the ship up, and later on it was proved they didn't. There was some kind of an incident in the ship, probably they say the dust of the coal caused it to explode. In any event, this launched the war. Well, Uncle Sam is going to get bigger and fatter now. The American purpose as we went into war is to prepare the islands for independence. Now, isn't that a nice thing to say? We went to war against Spain and Cuba and other islands of the sea, and we got over into the Philippines, and what were we doing? We're preparing them for independence. Here the Filipinos are in a concentration camp as we prepare them for independence. You see, after we got done whipping the Spanish and sending them on their way, then we turned our guns on the Filipinos, and we subjugated them to our will instead of setting them free. Filipino concentration camp, 1900. The American military effort became more systematically vicious and brutal. Now, this is a direct quotation from the President of the United States, and yes, it is correctly spelled according to the time period. The American people, entrenched in freedom, take their love for it wherever they go. Well, that's why we're in Afghanistan. That's why we went to Iraq. That's why we're in 130 countries around the world, isn't it? Taking freedom to these wonderful people. That's why we have 78,000 troops in Japan and 28,000 in Korea and so on. Okay, now let's go to the Philippines. I didn't even know where the Philippines were. I had to get a map out. I finally found the Philippines. It's clear over by China. Yeah, by China? What are we doing over beating up on people in the Philippines? Well, in the Philippines, while the President is declaring to the American people, remember the two illustrations, what they did and what they said? The President is telling the American people, we're taking freedom to the Philippines, so here's what we were doing in the Philippines. The President's commander-in-chief in the Philippines declared, shoot everyone over the age of 10. The more you kill and burn, the better it will please me. Now, this is a quotation from one of the top military leaders in the Philippines, serving the American commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief didn't rate very high in the President's book. One of the history books says we slaughtered more than 50,000 plus. Now, this particular book is the high school history book, the official literature. We slaughtered more than 50,000. Now we go to a book that is not the official literature. It's just a book trying to do a good job of reporting. He says we slaughtered more than 200,000, Chalmers and Johnson. And then we go to yet another book, and he declares we slaughtered 1 out of every 8. I don't know which one's right. Maybe they're all right. But it's not like what we were doing. The Empire, The Sorrow of Empire, by Chalmers Johnson, published in 2004, page 43. Perhaps he comes closer to explaining why we were there when he quotes from a United States senator at that time, Senator Albert Beveridge of Indiana. The Philippines are ours forever. And just beyond the Philippines are China's illimitable markets. The Pacific Ocean is ours. The Philippines are the stepping stones to China. This is the beginning of the rise to world empire. Now, we invaded China in 1900. American troops sent to China, and the reason was to protect American interest. What were our American interests in China in 1900? Thank you, you knew that. Opium. Our interests were to protect our British allies in their opium trade in China. Now you can Google this up. This is all readily available history. Anybody can learn it. It happened. It really happened. And so the British had an ongoing program of opium, taking opium into China. The Chinese government didn't like it. They tried to stop the British from importing opium. And then they started an internal conflict. And the Chinese had some of them surrounded some of the British embassy and some of the British people that were there moving the opium trade. And so they called on their allies, the United States. And we went in to free them so they could continue the opium trade. What's this? What are we doing here? 1918, the United States government invaded Russia. What for? Well, it says they were there to protect American interest. What were the American interests in Russia in 1918? Well, they just had a big revolution. Remember the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917? Where Peter Reshkov, the historian, wrote, the greatest event ever to take place in the history of the world. I'm quoting from the Moscow News, not Moscow, Idaho. The greatest event ever to take place in the history of the world. was the Socialist Revolution of 1917. Well, here we are now in Russia in 1918, and we're trying to do what? Protect American interest. We apparently were giving the military the authority to go over and pick a faction that they liked and see that they got into office. You know, like choosing the president for Iran or Iraq or Pakistan or wherever we think we need to choose their leadership. We were doing that in 1918 in Russia. After 2 years of beating up and getting shot and shooting them, we finally decided to come home because apparently we didn't pick out a faction. United States government meddling in the affairs of foreign nations became the pattern. While this was all going on, our great-grandparents were being born. This is a relief shot after all those miserable slides you've been watching and experiencing cognitive dissonance. This is the family farm, and your dad or your granddad was there. You remember that? Any of you have family that you can reflect back on the old days of Utah or wherever you were? That's the family farm. You all did. You had grandparents in agriculture? No? I bet you they were all lawyers. Were they? Railroad. Okay. You had some farming family? Oh, thank goodness. Okay. These people had no knowledge of what was going on. I've had lengthy discussions with my father. I know my grandfather didn't know what was going on. Wonderful people. Good, decent Latter-day Saints in my family. And it could have been Baptists or Catholics. They just did not know what was going on. This is my family up close. These are the farmers. These are the haymen out in the field. This is my dad on the right. He's 17 years old. This is my grandfather. These are his brothers. And they're just having fun here for a little rest break between haying day, hours. All day long they'd spend out haying, all summer long. Horses, all muscle power. And they would mow for hours and hours and hours and only mow 4 or 5 acres. And today, these big, huge machines can mow huge fields in one day. Well, what's that got to do with this lesson? In Isaiah we read, "My people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge." There are 2 ways to achieve socialism: revolution and evolution. In Soviet Union in 1917, they chose revolutionary socialism. That was the one where I quoted from Dr. Peter Reshton. The greatest event ever to take place in the history of the world was that one right there, according to that man. Now, God has a plan for happiness. That illustration is a beautiful illustration of that represents that plan. The world has a plan for happiness. Let this stained glass window represent that plan. If we take a close-up look at this, we're going to look at the detail. This is the close of this lesson. This is it. But this takes a few minutes. What do you think this guy is over here? He's pulling on a rope. Rope goes through these pulleys and goes down to billows. And down below the billows is a forge with flames. And they're heating things in this forge. And they just finished heating the world. Now they have the world on the anvil. They've heated it up to cherry red. These 2 men have their big black hammers, and they're beating on the world. What do I do for a living? I'm a blacksmith. Do you suppose when I put a piece of hot iron on the anvil, I'm trying to destroy it? Are you, David? Am I trying to destroy the iron? Oh, no. I'm trying to reshape the iron. And so up at the top, can you see it there in the fine red print? Remold it nearer to the heart's desire. This window was created in the year 1910 in Surrey, England. It's in the house of Beatrice Webb. And you can go there and view it today. The Fabian Socialist Society created the window in honor of the good things that they've accomplished. Henry Pease, H.G. Wells, George Bernard Shaw, and a host of other prominent men are in the illustration. Now, down at the bottom, it looks like this microphone drives me crazy today. Last night's mic I borrowed, it was really bad. Okay, here we go. Down in the corner, we have a guy thumbing his nose. See this guy right here? He's thumbing his nose. Because he didn't agree with how they were proceeding. His name is H.G. Wells. They're worshiping at an altar. The altar is made of books. On the top we have the books, Plays 1, pleasant. The second book down is Plays 2, unpleasant. The third book is Plays for Puritans. But the bottom book on the pile is Fabian Tracts and Essays. Fabian Essays in Socialism by George Bernard Shaw. Now, a long time ago, I read this book, like 30 years ago. And I listed the things in the book that they were doing in England in 1910 that they called socialism. See, some people today, they don't grasp what socialism is. Now, let's take a look at what socialism was in England in 1910. These are the principles that I listed out of that book so many years ago. Government ownership or control of all land. Now I illustrate that with modern illustration. This illustration is not really too modern because the map shows the black land is federally owned land and the white is either state or private land. But each year, the federal government acquires more land. Nevada looks like this, except that now it's 90-something, above 90% instead of 87%. The black area is owned by the federal government. The second one I copied from those Fabian Tracts and Essays, government ownership or control of major industry. Now, each of these requires, you can give an hour lesson at least on each one of these. Government control over labor. Government control or ownership of communications and transportation. Government control of all credit. Next week we'll give a lesson called What Has the Government Done to Our Money? This whole story here. Government control of all insurance. Government control of the educational system. Elimination of the significance of the family. Elimination of the significance of religion. What are they doing here? Yeah, they're taking the Ten Commandments off of public property. Establishment of a minimum wage. The universal system of pensions. Justified use of force if necessary. The axe with the blood-red cord to attain their socialistic goals. Now remember, this is all in England in 1910. I added this one from the Communist Manifesto. Karl Marx said we should have a graduated income tax to pay for the programs. The central figure here was the IRS leader at the time I made the slide, and in the newspaper article it said, "Tell us where you are and we'll send you money." These are the major principles of socialism. And all of them have been adopted in the United States in our years, in our life. Now the window up close. These two men are hammering on the world, but what's that object back between them? Oh my! This is called their coat of arms. They have a symbol to show how they're going to accomplish their task, how they will impose these 13 goals upon the people of England. What is that symbol? Like a wolf in a sheepskin. They chose this. They illustrated this as their shrine, as part of their socialist shrine in England. You know, I told this lesson in Texas a few years ago. Same exact lesson, same illustrations, except I didn't have this pretty colored picture. All I had was an old black and white drawing. 3 months later, I got the colored picture in the mail, a nice colored slide. And the man was a member of the state school board, of the Texas State School Board. And he said, "I couldn't believe what you showed me. It was so unbelievable that I actually called my friend in England, asked him to go to Surrey, England, and go about the house of Beatrice Webb and see if it was true." I was so pleased to find out that it was true, because I've never been there. And he thanked me and sent me the lovely pictures. Well, that's the end of that lesson. What's next?